Hi, ladies. Thank you for being so understanding about me being gone again today. Hopefully, I'll be back tomorrow. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and talk about 2-3. It should be a pretty easy lesson for you to recall from what we've learned in the past. Because basically, we're going to use what we did yesterday with factoring and solve equations using factoring. So just as kind of a reminder, that factoring can be used to solve equations of degree 2 or higher based on the idea that if you have A times B equals 0, then either A has to be equal to 0 or B has to be equal to 0. It really could be either one. When you think about it, if you had two numbers, for example, 2 times something has to equal 0, well, of course, that x would have to equal 0. We're going to broaden that idea to using it with factors. So if x plus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0, either the x plus 1 has to equal 0 or the x plus 2 has to equal 0. I think you're going to remember this and recall us learning this last year, and that this should be a pretty easy lesson for you. So some examples for what we're going to be doing is this first one. This should be a squared. It kind of looks like a 2. It should be squared. It didn't come over on my formatting very well, so I apologize for that. So I have 6x squared minus 7x equals 10. The first step is always to get everything over to one side and set equal to 0. Okay, you want to set the equation equal to 0, have all of the x's, everything over onto one side, and then set it equal to 0. So for example, on this first example, number 1, I would have 6x squared minus 7x minus 10 equals 0. So our next step is going to be to factor. Now we can use any of the methods that we had from yesterday to factor. In this case, I would start out with 2 sets of parentheses since there's not a greatest common factor. And ultimately, I'm going to go ahead and determine what some of the factors are for 6 as well as for negative 10. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I'll give you a second to try to actually factor that one on your own. This one's a little bit more complicated, but once you actually get this factored out, you'll realize that the correct factoring for this would be 6x here, and then a 1x there. And then if we go 5 and 2, then ultimately I would have 6 times 2 equals 12, 5 times x equals 5x. So then 12x minus 5x, or negative 12x. I want that one to be negative, plus 5x would give me negative 7x. So now that I have this fully factored, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. So I'd have 6x plus 5 equals 0, as well as x minus 2 equals 0. So from this one, I would have that 6x equals negative 5, or x equals negative 5/6. From this one here, from the second one, I would have that x is equal to 2. Those would be my two solutions. Okay. Now for this next one, again, let's fix this. This should be x squared. We want to basically multiply all of these out, bring everything over to one side, and then we're going to combine like terms to make it as simplified as possible, so then hopefully we can factor. So let's go ahead and look at this one. I'm going to go ahead and distribute this 3x into both pieces. So I would have 3x to the third now, since this was x squared. And then 3x times 2x would be plus 6x squared equals x squared plus 2x. Now we're going to bring everything over to one side, set the equation equal to 0. So I could subtract x squared from both sides as well as subtract a 2x. So I'd have 3x cubed plus 6x squared minus x squared would give me 5x squared minus 2x equals 0. Now I want to go ahead and factor, and so I'm going to factor by pulling an x out first. So I'd have x, and then left on the inside I have 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Now we want to try and factor out that trinomial, so keep that x on the outside. So leave that x there, and then you have the two binomials. Go ahead and try and factor out that trinomial. I'll give you a second. So when you factor this, you should end up with 3x and x. And then we have the factors of 2 are 2 and 1. And I want to have them add up to equal positive 5. So 3x times 2 would be 6 minus 1 would give me positive 5. Now in this case, I have 3 different factors. Do not forget about that x that you have out in front. That is the first factor. So I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. X could equal 0. 3x minus 1 could equal 0. Or x plus 2 could equal 0. When you solve each of those individually, you would get solutions for x as x equals 0, 1/3, and negative 2. That would be your solution. Okay, so solving equations by factoring, just kind of some general step-by-step guide. You want to simplify equations and move all terms to one side. Factor the polynomial, set each factor equal to 0, check the solutions in the original equation. Sometimes if you're lucky, factoring is unnecessary. Sometimes some of the numbers will cancel out, or the squared terms will subtract out from either side. So that's nice when that happens. It doesn't always happen, so don't get your hopes up, but sometimes it will. So I'm gonna go ahead and have you pause this page so that you guys can copy this down if you choose to, and then we will do some board work after that. All right, so here are your board work questions, person 1, 2, 3, and 4. Follow those steps. You'll notice over to the right, I have the answers for these. Go ahead and kind of self-check your answers as you go. If you don't get the correct answer, look back and see if you can figure out where you went wrong. If you get stuck as a group, you may ask the substitute, and they have a copy of my answer key so you can see my work. Homework, when you guys are done with all 4 and you get all 4 questions correct, homework is page 44, set B. My expectation is that for the remainder of the class period, you're working on that homework. So go ahead and press pause on this video, and then so that this screen will be saved up on the screen. And I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks. Have a great day.